This weekend's MotoGP race in Le Mans had everything. We had the top four in the championship finishing 1, 2, 3, 4. What more do you want? We had close racing, aggressive riding, and some very unexpected crashing. What more do you want? And we had a race that came down to the very last laps between three of the heaviest hitters in MotoGP today. What more do you want, people? But before I get into my full race recap, if you could please hit subscribe, help us grow here on YouTube. And a fun little fact is I basically respond to every single comment. So come join the fun. So at the start of the Le Mans Grand Prix, Pecco Bagnaia got a great start, Jorge Martin got a fantastic start, and both factory Aprilias started really well. As well as VR46 rider Fabio Di Giannantonio. He got a great jump off the line. Unfortunately for his teammate, his bike just jumped straight up in the air. His start was terrible. But at the front, we saw Pecco and Jorge Martin kind of scrapping it out, and we saw Pecco getting the better of the two in the early exchanges. Maverick Vinales runs wide very early off the track, has to fall back a few positions, and that hurt him for the race. I mean, I think he could have been a lot closer to the front if it wasn't for that early mistake. And more bad luck for the Aprilias when Enea Bastianini basically pushes Aleix Espargaro wide. He has to run through the runoff area. Enea doesn't even make the corner, so he gets himself a long lap penalty, which is going to come into play later. Now, Fabio Di Giannantonio was looking very strong, sitting there in third and fourth place, but the man on the move was Marc Marquez. On Saturday, we saw Marc come from 13th to go to second and be on the podium. Could he actually do the same thing on Sunday? He kind of downplayed the chances, but there he was, cutting his way through the crowd. But Di Giannantonio was not giving up the space easily. He had his elbows out, and I think the battle with Di Giannantonio is the reason Marc Marquez was not on the top step of the podium in this race. He lost way too much time battling it out with Fabio, and by the time he caught the pair in the front, it was kind of, one lap to go. How much progress more could he really make? And while we're talking about Fabio, we should probably talk about the one on the Yamaha, the one from France that was running in the French Grand Prix. Now, yes, there were some people that crashed in front of him, but he was running a very good race pace, fending off the likes of Jack Miller and Aleix Espargaro lap after lap. He was running around in 6th place, and on that Yamaha, that is no small feat. But alas, it wasn't to be for young Fabio. He throws it away in the gravel trap. Now, he was very upset initially, but he had to kind of say after the race, listen, we had a pretty good weekend. I showed some form, I showed some speed, the Yamaha showed some guts, and the French fans were amazing. So amazing, in fact, they got boots, gloves, knee sliders from both him and Johann Zarco at the end of the race. Now, before I get into what happened in the final throws of this race, we do have to call out that Pedro Acosta makes his first rookie mistakes, crashes out trying to go 2-1 past Fabio Di Giannantonio and Aleix Espargaro, loses the front, slides through both of them. Fabio was lucky not to get collected in that crash. And Marco Bezzecchi hates France this year. He was ready to leave after crashing in the sprint and then doing the exact same thing in the main race. But back at the front, Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin were battling it out, and Jorge Martin was feeling speedy. But the battle between themselves was bringing in, guess who? Marc Marquez. And by the last laps of this race, we had a 1-2-3 that you couldn't tell who was going to come out victorious. Jorge makes a decisive pass, he puts the hammer down. Pecco was waiting to line up a move later in the last lap, but before he really had the chance, Marc Marquez made his move, block pass, gets into second place, and Pecco has to settle for third. Big victory for Jorge Martin, and again, a 13th to 2nd for Marc Marquez. He was on fire this weekend. After the horrible situation of qualifying, he was on fire this weekend. Now, further back, 2.2 seconds behind, finishes Enea Bastianini in 4th. And the reason that's important is he had a long lap penalty, which costs you about 2 seconds. If not for that penalty, would he have been in that last lap battle? I think so. Other finishers of note, Maverick Vinales comes home in 5th. Fabio Di Giannantonio, after doing his own long lap penalty, comes in 6th. Behind him, you had Franco Morbidelli into 7th, and Brad Binder, who had qualified last on the grid, comes from 22nd to finish 8th. He has to say that's kind of a huge salvage job for the KTM. And that does it from France. We have had 3 races in a row that would all qualify as instant classics. We are being spoiled this year in MotoGP. Let's keep it going.